Hi, folks. Wasn't thinking about putting something together soon, but somebody was spouting off on Nextdoor and giving some really, really bad advice, legally speaking. So I basically, since I hate tapping on my phone, I basically put this thing together, and I'm going to link it to the event. Okay, so just a second. So, sorry, not quite. So basically, the situation is that this woman came on next door and claimed, whether it happened or not, we don't know, that she woke up, looked out the window, and there was a man out there filming her with a video camera. Whoa, okay, watch out. And then she said she went out and confronted him. Okay. In the thread, a lot of people were saying, don't do that. Don't confront him. Good advice. But some people were giving the advice of, well, you need to take along, like a mace or a firearm or something like that. And yeah, that kind of set me off. One of them basically said, I'm going to read this. But if she had gone out there with a gun and you tried to attack her, she would have been within her rights to shoot him. Another post by her. Also, you can't shoot someone for just breaking into your home. You have to feel threatened in order to legally shoot someone. Now, she went on, and quoted these things and stuff like that. And she obviously didn't know the background, okay? And that's what I want to do right now. I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. And really, anyone says you can do this or you can do that, legally speaking, is, well, full of it. Because even the lawyers will say, well, it depends. And, there's a whole lot going into things. I'm just going to go over some general principles to make you look at this situation in a different way. Well, in the correct way. So, in general, governments don't like their citizens doing violence against other citizens. They're kind of strange that way. And the more serious the damage, the more heavy the burden. Breaking someone's nose is one thing, shooting them dead is another. And essentially, when you get into a situation that you claim self-defense, you have to prove you didn't contribute to making the situation in the first place. So, you can't insult somebody and then threaten them. And then when they attack you, say, well, it was self-defense. This is a problem in a lot in martial arts. A lot of places claim to be teaching self-defense, and they're not. MMA is not teaching self-defense. End of story. You can use some of the training that they do, sparring and stuff like that. But the emphasis of MMA is you're there to beat the other person up and they're there to beat you up. That's not self-defense. They don't deal with a lot of things like, just getting out of there or dealing with weapons. But yeah, in self-defense, you basically have to show that the use of violence was the only thing you could do. You had no other choice. So if somebody, again, in self-defense, if somebody says, like your mother wears army boots and you say, oh yeah, what about, and you start going back at it, when the first blow is struck, it's not a case of attacker and defender. It's, as a friend of mine once said, asshole number one and asshole number two. So yeah, that's it in martial arts. I mean, you've got to walk away. And this is one of the things that, carrying a firearm really should impress on you. That, if a fight starts to go against you, fist fight, then you can't give up that gun. If he beats you unconscious, there's a chance he can take the gun off of you and then shoot you dead before you can respond. So you can't afford to lose a fist fight. So you really have an emphasis on not getting into a fist fight. Somebody insults your mother, you let it go. Okay? That's it. That's the way it is, legally speaking. And in this case, does going up to somebody and confronting them, is that helping lead to violence? There are cases where, it's all of a sudden, like you would not expect violence, but, you go over to the neighbor's house and say, hey, could you turn down the music? They pull a knife and start attacking you. Okay. In that case, you're not really expecting violence, in most situations. But if you say, I thought there might be danger confronting this person, so I pulled out a gun. That's not what the law wants to hear. Okay. If you think it's so dangerous that you've got to pick up mace or a gun or something like that, the legal situation, the legal reality is that the law wants you to basically not confront them. End of story. Go ahead and check with everything. Now, and the second thing, now, this is often called a duty to retreat. In other words, someone says, your mother wears army boots. You say, I'm getting out of here. You leave. Okay. You've just shown that you are, don't want to engage in this. The guy follows you out to the parking lot and there's a fight. Well, you've shown that you've tried to get out of there. You've tried to, run away, tried to avoid violence, but it was forced upon you. When violence is forced upon you, you can claim self-defense. Of course, getting back into martial arts, little cults, you'd be amazed how many times people would say that they're always surrounded by relatives or on walkers, and they can't walk away safely without the person following them. Yeah, and excuses. But this is countered sometimes by what's called stand your ground laws. And this is you do not have to retreat if you are just there and someone comes up to you and starts doing things. This basically came about because so many prosecutors were abusing the system. If you think prosecutors are good guys, some are, but there's a novel that I haven't read called The Bonfire of Vanities. I did see the movie back in the day with Tom Hanks, Bruce Willis, Melanie Griffith, and a great appearance by Morgan Freeman explaining the realities of the legal system. That's what he did basically in the movie, a prosecutor goes after someone because it would look good in his upcoming election for DA. And if you think that's just fiction, go ahead and look up the Duke lacrosse, scandal. The guy that basically went after them was in an election cycle, and he was trailing, and he wanted to appeal to the voters. The place that the whole thing went down was 60% black. So going after, a bunch of white guys that he accused of raping a black woman, resonated. He ended up doing a little bit of time behind bars because of his misconduct. So don't think that the prosecutors are just going to take the right side. If they think they can go after you and it will get them votes, well, assume that they will. And if you're wrong, well, then you're lucky. Okay. But assume that they are going to think about the next election rather than what's fair for you. So, and so that's why the stand your ground laws came about. And, it is likely that a lot of them are abused. When George Zimmerman was first, the first reports of George Zimmerman shooting Trayvon Martin came out, the news reports basically portrayed it as he went up to the kid, confronted him, and then when the fight started out, he, claimed stand your ground laws. As it turns out, not one of those statements was correct. He did not go up to the guy and confront him. It was quite the opposite. And he never tried to, say that it was stand his ground. He was basically having his head bashed into the pavement, which can kill somebody if taken too long. But yeah, stand your ground laws do exist. Here in Colorado, where this conversation is going on, we don't have stand your ground laws, but we do have what's called the castle doctrine. And that means that you do not have to retreat if someone, enters your household without your permission, burglary and such like that. You do not have to prove that you're in fear for your life when someone breaks in your house when you're in there. There's a meme going around, if you shoot someone and break in your house, that means you treasure your goods rather than another person's life. My response is, if someone's breaking in my house, why do I have to assume immediately that they're after my goods rather than my life? And, Colorado has some pretty crazy laws, but the castle doctrine is pretty good. If you had to actually leave your house, that's probably the safest place for you, before someone actually breaks in. So, yeah, we don't have to do that. It's assumed that if someone is, trying to get into your house, that, you are, in fear for your life. Now, if you pull up to your house, you're in your car, you pull up to your house, you look in the window and you see some guys rummaging around, you can't go in and confront them and say, I'm castle doctrine. You can't, because if you stay in your car, you drive off, you tell the police, you're not in danger. You can't show that you're in danger until you go inside. So that's the situation is, if you have a position or a responsibility that forces you to confront someone. Security guard, bouncer, ER nurse, when somebody walks in with a knife, happens a lot actually. Of course, a police officer, or if somebody's wandering around muttering strange things with a knife in his hand, and you're a teacher at this school that he walks into. Okay, in those situations, yes, you probably can get away with confronting them. But in the situation that I detailed, he's out there, he's filming. There's no visible weapons, according, that she said. If it had gone violent and she had admitted that she had picked up a weapon in order to defend herself in case it got violent, it would probably have not gone very well legally speaking. There's a lot of factors. There's a lot of nuances. I mean, they're charging people for things they shouldn't. They're not charging people for things that they should. A female, and if this guy's a big burly guy and she's a small female, and the prosecutor thinks that, this isn't going to look good in front of a jury, maybe she could get away with it. I personally would not want to find out, myself. So yes, think about that general principle. What are you doing to avoid getting to violence? And if, despite all you do to avoid violence, it's still thrust upon you, then we start talking about self-defense. If you had an out, if you contributed to the violence happening, you start arguing back or whatever, then don't expect anyone in the DA's office to accept your explanation that it was self-defense. A friend of mine once said that teaching self-defense without teaching the laws of self-defense is like teaching people to drive without teaching them what stop signs mean. And I believe it. There's a hell of a lot more than this. If you don't have a lawyer, I've got a lawyer. You should think about it, especially if you carry a gun or something like that. Stay safe, folks, and I hope this explained a few things.